Hello, everyone. A wonderful afternoon, at least here for my German colleagues and all you guys from Europe, I guess. Would be really great if you just post a short hello into the chat so that we can see who's participating. I see some guys from Chicago, USA, Australia, Bitburg, nice, Aachen, Quebec, cool, Frankfurt, south of France, LA, UK, Cyprus, Canada, France, UK, Spain, I can't follow, Kentucky, Hamburg, Hanover, Berlin, Mexico, nice, Mexico, cool. Tappenbeck in Germany, I don't know that. Hi, Jörg. Cool, yeah, a very warm welcome. I'm always a little bit overwhelmed by the huge number of participants, even when we just have such a tiny news during the soccer season, like a new version of Linux to deliver. Scotland, Munich, very nice. And Doha. Martin, you need to get me informed. Where's Doha? In Qatar. Oh, cool. Yeah, so always a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit shy of what I have to tell you, but as you can see in our background, says something new in the Ninox universe. It's a new version 3.4.0. And to be honest, we are even a little bit faster than our marketing department because we are already approaching 3.4.2, which fixes a couple of minor stuff we found in the last 2 days. 3.4 is out since Monday. It's available on the public cloud. So if you just go to app.ninox.com, you will experience the new version. When you go to the app stores, you will find Ninox 3.4 for iOS, for the Mac, for Android, on all of our platforms. On some, like iOS and the Mac, we are on a rolling rollout circle. So when you're on automated update, you might not have yet the new version, but you can get it actively from the App Store. And within the next 5 days, you will definitely have it on automated update. And yeah, so having that said, what is 3.4? 3.4 is maybe not the big bang release. It's more of a continuous advancement of some of the features we know are used especially from our power users, so from our partners and those Linux users who go really deep with our platform. So today we will cover this, and the main things we will talk about is the new advancements we have on the API side. So we brought up new features on the API, we stabilized some of the existing functionality, and we also ensured that the API is compatible across our whole product line. So public cloud, private cloud API, that will be completely compatible in the future. Second point is we also worked on some pretty nice Linux scripting capabilities, again, for integration purposes, for power use cases. And then finally, third point, for our dear private cloud customers, we enriched the self-service options. So a lot of the features that you could request only from our support so far are now directly accessible for you. And also we did a lot in order to strengthen our capabilities to integrate Linux with other services. Finally, there's one aspect we probably won't have time today to cover. It's more about the user experience on mobile devices. So we are on a continuous road to increase the responsiveness of our web application. And with the new release, you can just check it out on your phone. You will see some of the features be much more approachable on mobile devices, working much more smoothly. And yeah, having that said, I'm not alone today. So, and by the way, I realize I just failed to introduce myself. So who does not know me, I'm Frank Böhmer, founder and CTO of Ninox. And with me, I have our product manager, Aditya. Aditya is handling the Q&A section also. I have Himanshu on the panel. Himanshu is our leading backend engineer. And then finally, I have Fabian on the panel here. Fabian is in our customer success department, one of the most experienced guys when it comes to Ninox, I feel sometimes. So having that said, I'm handing over now to Himanshu. Himanshu, tell you what's in the box. Tell us what's in the box.
Hey everyone. So yeah, actually it's a Pandora box. No, it's having a lot of features. For the people who are interested in integrations, and we did try our best to make the integration space this time a bit more approachable with the new stuff that we have in place and new capabilities. And you know what I have in mind? Maybe just to walk you through the stuff that we have done and maybe discuss some use case that comes up. And, then you can later on decide how you want to use those features in your applications. So with this said, I'll just start a couple of things, maybe with Ninox scripting, our favorite tool, right? So allow me to share my screen, and I hope you guys can see it already. What I'm gonna do is, wait, let me start with the application, the web app. And who doesn't know it? It's great. So guys, what we have today are a couple of functions that were introduced only recently. Yeah. So I'm going to talk to you about a function that most likely you are kind of curious to know about, and that is wait for sync. And this is story first maybe that I would like to discuss. Yeah. So why wait for sync? Why is it necessary? What's the reason behind it? But we all use native applications, right? So most of us are on Mac apps, some of us are on the Android apps, and yes, a lot on the iPad and the iPhone apps, right? So, and these apps are offline capable, which means that whatever you do, whatever you make, whenever you make changes, they're first applied to a local copy of your database that is available on your device. And then behind the scene, there is a synchronization engine running actively that would bring your application in synchronization with the Ninox cloud. That's how it happens, right? So it's an asynchronous process, so to say, and there are a couple of hiccups arriving out of it. So just to mention, the hiccup is, let's say that you made some change and then you call an Integromat scenario, but the synchronization hasn't run yet. So your changes that were there on the native device are not yet on the server. Now what happens is Integromat is trying to find something on the server which is not there, and bummer. So there is something I have in store for you, and what it does, what it promises is that if you execute that function, anything that is not yet synchronized on the native applications will get synchronized to the server. So let me try bringing up my application first, and the syntax is very, a simple one, and the idea is that you have a button, and let's say make changes, well, get in sync. So we have a button called get in sync, and what it does is it simply makes a call to wait for sync. And this is the function. That's it. And what wait for sync returns is a small boolean, which would let you know if the synchronization was successful or not. And let's say we have a structure like this: alert sync successful, and well, maybe do something after the synchronization is successful. Maybe let's simply log, or it could be anything basically. Yeah. But if the synchronization is successful, is not successful, then you could, for example, go a different path. So sync not successful, maybe creating a log or notifying other users that because the synchronization hasn't proceeded, we are not able to proceed with the next set of operations, and that's how we stop. So this gives you an ability to hook into the synchronization loop and do something based on a successful or an unsuccessful synchronization. So that's the button. And one thing I would really point out is that it makes a lot of sense on the native apps, but not so much on the web browser. So how about we move to native app first, right? I'm just gonna bring out my Mac app, and it will be there in a minute, coming up anytime soon. And meanwhile, what I'll do is create a small Integromat scenario that expects some changes to be there on the server, right? And this is how I'm gonna do it. So we have a scenario that, and the idea is very simple. As soon as you have created a record, I'm gonna trigger an Integromat scenario that will look for that record, right? And it's just that simple. And in a usual use case, it will just fail. Why? Because I mean, it won't fail necessarily, but there are chances for failure because the synchronization is asynchronous. It could happen in the time, it could not, but wait for sync will guarantee that for us. So let's try to do that. I'm going to use a webhook that will receive a message from our native application that, okay, everything is fine. Now let's do something. So it's a custom webhook, and let's say I'm just going to call it release 34x. There are no IP restrictions. That's it. And when you create a webhook, by the way, this application that I'm using is one of the integration platforms that we uh, most of the time recommend. There are others also, so feel free to use anyone because everything is same throughout the integration platforms that are available. It's just probably our personal preference that we go with an Integromat. So there's nothing to worry about if you're having Zapier or Microsoft Flow, or for the hardcore users, Node-RED. So no problem. They all have similar concepts, and I'm sure that you will find specific modules over there also. And if you want to know more, please feel free to join our API webinar, where me or my colleague Bruna and at times Fabian can walk you through stuff related to API. So we have a webhook that will listen for something, right? And let's create that something now. Here's my application, and there it is. Let's switch to our team. Oh wow, that's a lot of team. Release 340, and how about I create a customer, and as soon as I've created the customer, I would want to do something with that customer. Maybe alert my sales guys that there's a new customer in there. So it's very simple. Let new customer is create customer, and new customer dot name is, for example, well, there's no name, there's an email though. Imanshu, new customer dot last name is saying, and that's it. So as soon as I create this, I would want to call Integromat and notify that there is a new customer. Please send out a notification to the sales guys. So how do we do that? It's very simple. You simply copy the Integromat scenario and make an HTTP request to it. So for all the guys who are new to Ninox scripting, and these are something that you would find in our manual. And if you have any problem, you can at any point in time reach out to customer support, and we'll be happy to help you out with that. So it's a post request that I'm trying to make to this endpoint, and there are no headers basically. Well, maybe just one. Content type, application/JSON and some data. So how about I say that the data is this, right? So, and the name doesn't look okay. I'm just gonna call it create customer. So now that we have the button in place, let's listen for new connections. I create the customer. Here I have a notification that there is a customer created with the ID, with some record ID, and we're gonna do something about it. So that part is going out to Ninox and fetching that record and maybe doing something around it, right? So I want to get a record from a specific connection, and this connection is, well, the idea of connection is that you gotta give Integromat your API key so Integromat can look into your account for specific teams, for databases, tables, records, and do some actions in there. So, and it's still consistent throughout all the integration platforms. So I'm going to go to my team, which is release 34x, and to the database, which is invoices, and to a table, which is customer, because I have just created a customer and I want to fetch the ID of it. And yes, I'm going to use ID. There is one small thing that I'm going to change, which is, you see, when you're using the API, you need to provide the numeric ID. And what we have here is A14. That doesn't sound right, right? So instead of doing that, I'll just make a small change, which is number, and that's it. So now let's listen for new connections. When I do that, I have something coming in, and then okay, wow. Well, this time the synchronization was fast. So we already had the data in the server, which is why I say that, Ninox is awesome. It doesn't let you down most of the time. So, but it still has some edge case. And the way for you to guarantee that the data is always there is simply to wait for sync here. And if the synchronization is successful, you want to post a message to Integromat. Otherwise, maybe you would want to alert sync not successful, not notifying sales team, just as an example. Okay, so now let's try that again. I run and I create the customer. Oops. Of course, there's a thing, something hickey over here. Yeah, but generally the idea would be that you would simply have your synchronization loop forced, and you will have the data over here on the server. And I think there's something problematic going on here. I need to check that out, but that's the idea. So, and give me a minute. I'll just do a restart of my guy. Nice, great. So that's about wait for sync, guys. And I would recommend that you use it whenever you have, you want a guarantee for your data to be on the server. That's it. Just to start using it, and you will have what you want exactly on the server every time. And yeah. So that was about wait for sync. Besides that, we also have a couple of other new functions, and maybe I just wanna I'll simply go through that. Yeah. So we have something now called file metadata, and it allows you to do a lot of things. For example, if I simply say that I have this photo, I want to see what is the size of that photo, and if the size is under a particular threshold, then maybe I want to push it out to Integromat for feeding into something else. This is my use case. So for that, what I'm going to do is have a small button that would say push file, push image to Integromat. And on click of it, I'll do something like this. File info is file metadata, this, and then I need to give to it, wait a minute, the name of the file. So for example, the name of this file is Shutterstock something something. I'll simply copy that, put it in my function, and that's my file info function. So what does file info give to you? It gives to you some generic properties like the name of the file, the size of the file, what is the content type of the file. If it's an image, then it's going to be image slash what type of image it is. It could be PNG, it could be JPG. If it's a PDF, then it's going to be image slash PDF and so on. So it gives a lot of information to you. And there are certain ways to use that. For example, yeah, just as I mentioned, you have, for example, you have a limited capacity in your Google Drive and you only want to have important files, but if they are under a certain size, right? So for that, what you could do is simply say that item file info and the stuff that we receive as size is less than equal to 5,000 and the size is in bytes. So if that is the case, then we can simply post to Integromat the file info, and based on that information, Integromat can do a lot of things, whatever it needs, right? So I'm gonna copy this. Wait a minute, stop that. Copy the address, go to your HTTP function, paste it, content type, application/JSON. Well, this is kind of, it's a neat little trick to let Integromat know what kind of data it is expecting, what kind of data is coming in, and Integromat can do basic formatting for you. So I would always recommend that you add it whenever you're transferring a JSON type of data. So what are we transferring? For example, I'm transferring the file name, and let's get the file name from file info name, and that's it. If the size is less than that, then we do it. So let me start my Integromat scenario and wait. The rest of the part does not make sense. So let's disconnect that. I copy it, push a mesh to Integromat, and here we have it. Well, the size was actually smaller. It does, it is something, it's something odd that is coming in. That's probably, I think I used something that I should not have, but let me show you what the output of the file info method is. So file info, you provide to this method the record in which the file needs to be looked in and the name of the file. So no, not file info, it's file metadata. And right now, because I haven't provided any file, it's just gonna return to me an empty stuff. But if I do, oh wait, I was doing this over here. If I do, this is what I get. A bunch of things. Wait.
It was pointed out that you misspelled application in your header, I think.
Maybe. Oh, that's actually nice. Yeah, I misspelled it. But also to give you guys a brief look at what the output of file info is, it's basically that. So you have a name, you have the size, you have the modified date, and so on. And then you, for example, if you, oh well, wait. If you run it, now we know that the file is not small enough. Well, it does receive something that I don't know why, but that's the idea. So this is what file info gives to you. I think I know why. So it's just a simple one. You push it and doesn't come through. Why? Because the file was not a small enough. Now let's increase the number to a certain extent. Let's say that the threshold is 50,000, and now you want to push it into format. Fine. Well, give me a minute. This is the name of the file that was received. So that's how you would use the file info function, for example. And that's a neat little function. It does allow you to do a couple of operations based on some attributes of the file that are present in your database. And yeah, and now you have idea how to use it. So feel free to. That was about file info, but we have some really nice endpoints that would allow you to do a lot more than just that. So let's clean up this stuff, and I'm going to talk to you about some other functions that we have invented. How many of us know URL off? I mean, we have been talking about this the public URL, right, Fabian? And a lot of us were excited that finally we have a way to get to the exact point where somebody would want to, right? So you have the URL, you share it, and yeah, so everybody will have a URL that would point to a particular record. And there is a function, there is a formula that allows you to retrieve that URL from within the Ninox scripting language. And the way you do that is by simply calling URL off and the entity that you want the URL for. So I want the URL for a particular record, which is why I just typed in this over here. And this is what I have, a URL which points to a particular record. And if I open it, I will jump to that record straight away. Well, the problem is this still requires you to be present in that team, at the very least, also have an Ninox account, right? But there are cases when you would still want your, let's say, records or a particular view to be available to the general public who are not still having, I don't know, some access to an Ninox account or some access to an Ninox team. So for that, let me just give you a use case. I am a developer and I'm working out maybe some breakdown of a project that I would at some point like to share with my product manager or whosoever I'm proposing the solution to. So let's call it project management database. And what I'm going to do here is I have task name, the thing that needs to be done, some details about it, how it would be done, and then approximate deadline and date, right? So Aditya is very insisting and he wants me to come up with something like that. And this is what I have. I use Ninox as basically for everything, and I would want to do some analysis, some management within Ninox, right? So what I would do is, and this project that I want to build is, let's say, shared views, right? We all know the shared views. So there are some tasks that I want to do, and let's call it building infrastructure. And the details, there are some details to it: spin up microservices, and do a couple of other things, etc., etc. I'm just going to write it, etc. here, and some approximate date, end date, which is this. And let me just duplicate this. These are some basic tasks that I have in my task management, right? And this is what Aditya is interested in. So, and let's just have some dates on that: building infrastructure, building apps, and deployment. Now, I cannot invite Aditya to my team. Why? Because maybe I'm a freelancer. I have some other projects coming in and going in. So what I can do is I can use this feature, share this view, which has been there for a really long time. I can simply share the view as an HTML file, and there it is. This is the breakdown of the task that Aditya need. And I can just provide this URL to Aditya, and Aditya will immediately have an understanding of what needs to be done. Now, it includes some manual work, right? So you gotta go to your application and share the view and do a couple of things like choosing the data or format you want your views to be shared in and so on. So, well, this doesn't work out. So what we did was we created a small function for you, and this function allows you to share the views. So it's very simple. It's like, you know, share view. You give to the view the name of the table, table one, in my case, and this will automatically share the view for you. And let me actually alert that. So if I do that and I do it, I get a shared link. And I can just simply copy this link or maybe send it through Integromat, which would trigger an email to Aditya. And I can do a lot of crazy things with that. And this allows you this allows you to have the functionality of this pop-up within Ninox scripting language. So you can imagine how you could use it, right? There are different variants, different ways to share the view. For example, the one that you're looking at shares the default view of a table. Well, you can also pinpoint which particular view you want to share. So I can share, for example, a view called all, or maybe a view called Aditya, just as an example. So I have a view for Aditya, and why? Because it is something special. It has maybe not the deployment thing, and filter not equal deployment, and that's it. So you can see that this view at the moment is not shared, right? And as soon as I press the button, I get a link which would help me share the particular view that I have. So now if I go to share view, you have the view shared over there. There are other ways to share the views now. So not just that, you can also specify the content type that you want your view to be shared in. Content type, and let's say I want it to be PDF for some reason. I shared it, and now it's PDF. Sorry, I do not have hook to the view, so you can see it's now PDF. And when I click that link, I will get a PDF back. And that's how share view works. Good thing it's not limited to views. You also have images that you can share, right? We always had this image field where you will have any sort of image, right? So let me drop in an image here. And there you have it. I want a shared view for that, a shared link for that. The good thing is you can just simply say share file and give to it an image field, and it will send to you the URL which is there for the file. And now you can simply use it to get the image. And that's just how easy it is. So now let's imagine a terrible situation where where you have shared a lot of views and you just don't want to go through all of the views and unshare them. Well, we have a small utility for that. You can simply say unshare all views and give to it a table name. I want to give table one, run it. Now you will see that they all are unshared. And that's just how easy it is. So now you can do a lot with the share functionality within the Ninox scripting language. Maybe also, you know, couple it with some triggers with an integration scenario and send out the shared link as much as you want. So that's also some really nice thing that we have. Well, this was about Ninox scripting language. And guys, am I missing something? I don't think, right? Not at least not in Ninox scripting. How about we jump to API endpoints? Everything that we just talked about here is also available on the API endpoints, because this is how we want it, right? We just don't we want to add new features in Ninox scripting, which are also available over API, and so that you could use whichever platform you want and just go ahead with that, right? So, let me introduce you to something. I have this image, right? This is actually a 5K image, guys. And this is very big. There are times when you do not want the actual image to be downloaded or maybe previewed somewhere. I mean, I've seen many of you actually using Ninox as a backend, and wherein you would have files over there and you want to show it within your website and so on. And you only want the preview of the file and you do not want the whole file. Imagine a file this big, how much of a load and how much of the loading time it will incur when your website is loading and trying to get the file from the Ninox database. So to ease that up, we have something very nice, and that is called the thumbnail endpoint. And the idea to get the thumbnails is very simple. I would say if any one of you is not aware of the APIs, please join our webinar and maybe I can, just walk you through some basics of the API, but I'm just going to go through it this time very straight. And if you have questions, you can maybe just drop it in the chat and my colleagues will answer that. So the way you access API is very simple. We have this universal URL that's not going to change ever. api.ninox.com/v1, and you just try to recall the hierarchy within Ninox. You have teams, within teams you have databases, within databases you have tables, records, and files, and so on, right? So we're going to follow that hierarchy over here. I have teams, and you need to provide an authorization header, by the way. So, and the way you do that is by simply providing an authorization with a value of bearer space your API token. Some of you might question, where do I get this API token from? It's also very approachable. You just need to go to your application, click on Zapier integrations, copy your token, and that's your token. And if you do not see anyone, press generate and use it. So that's my token. I'm going to use it, and let's see how many teams I have. Well, a lot. I'm not going to go through the drilling part here. I'm just gonna use what I have already. So I know that this is the URL. I can simply copy the team ID from the URL, paste it in there, and let's also write databases because databases comes within the teams. And you copy the database ID, paste it in there. After it comes the tables. I know that I only have one table, but still to get the table ID, you can use again the URL. So I know that after the module in the URL is the table ID, you use that. And then comes the records. Within the tables are the records. So if you hit that endpoint, this is what you get with, right? So you have a couple of stuff, and then in a record, which is building app, I have some files. So how do I get files? You simply need to use the record ID, the unique ID of that particular record, paste it in there, and go to the files. And once you have files, well, you can simply use the name of the file, get it, and this will give you the 5K image. Look at the size of it. It's 194.3 KBs. I mean, Ninox does some of the optimization, but still it's a big file, right? So you can simply ask for thumbnail for that file by writing thumb.jpg, and look at the size that you're saving. Imagine this in your website. The loading times would reduce drastically if you're using Ninox as the backend for your website. So that's how you use the thumbnail endpoint. And well, there's more around it. And maybe just give me a minute. Of course. How about? I mean, we discussed about the file metadata function, right? So I want to see the size or the information about this file also from the API. It's very simple. You can simply write metadata towards the end of the endpoint, and you will be having the metadata of all the files, of that particular file, basically. And I mean, it's not just limited to that. You can also have metadata, that particular metadata for all the files by simply querying the files endpoint. And it will give you the metadata of all the files within that record. So for example, if I were to add another image, then I will simply have that. So yeah, this is about the endpoints that we have, the new endpoints, and I really hope that this will help you maybe do a bit more on the integration side. And there are a couple other things that were also introduced. But maybe I actually would like to talk something about harmonization of the URL. How many of you are private cloud users? I guess a lot, maybe, yeah? So there have been some problems around private clouds sometime back. I mean, not problems, but confusion, right? So in the public cloud API, it's very simple that you simply type api.ninox.com/vwin/teams, and you would have everything. But for private cloud, it was a bit of a pain, right? So to do that, you would have to do, I'm having, by the way, a dummy private cloud here. So you needed to write aditya.ninoxdb.de, the private cloud URL that you have, and then the team ID. So you used to have, I mean, there was a necessity to have the team ID within the URL at the first place. For example, I could just say this particular team ID and then API/vwin. You see, there is a huge difference. I mean, maybe not huge, but there was a difference, which was kind of confusing for you guys. We have tried to harmonize that interface. And when I say harmonize, I don't mean to say that we have deprecated this interface. This is still working. So if your existing integrations make use of that URL structure, it doesn't affect you. But for the new guys who are just going to get a new private cloud, well, you can always simply go to vwin/teams/your team ID, just like the public cloud, and you would have it working. So let me show you what that looks like. And while I'm showing you this also would mean that I'm gonna demo to you another stuff about private cloud API keys. Earlier, the private cloud customers, they used to request customer support for the API key, but now they can do it on their own. So within this tool, you also now have ability to generate API keys for private cloud. So you can use the tool and generate as many API keys you want. And you see, we also have a small option there, which says that you can restrict an API key to a particular role. And now you can imagine that having access restrictions also on the API level would mean that you're allowed to do only certain things based on the role that you have configured for that particular API key. So let's say that I use this particular API key, then I can simply use that as the authorization header. Bearer space this. Oh, that is something. Oh, of course, you cannot, by the way, get a particular team on the private cloud API. So you need to go in. So I go in and I reach out to databases. Oh my God, I get the databases. That's nice. So yeah, this was about reading yeah, the private cloud API using the similar structure as that of public cloud API. And as I mentioned, this doesn't deprecate the old structure. That would still be functional. It's just an ease and a convenience for the new guys and for the new integrations. So feel free to use it. And well, I would actually maybe talk a little bit more about this this particular interface. Well, you can actually configure the API key to now restrict access or perform only certain level of things that that a particular role would do. So for example, I can just say that within a customer, let me see, edit fields, create record, only admin, delete record, only admin, allowed to write, only admin, and save changes. So only admins are allowed to create records and nobody else. So now what I do is I create an API key. Where is it? Wait, I guess I missed it. Oh, here it is. Now I create an API key which is restricted only to admin rights. So no. Let's go to Zapier integration and disable editor and only admin. And how about I create another API key just for editors. So the idea is very simple. This guy is allowed to create records, but this guy is not. So how do we do it? We simply go to our cloud API, we copy the database ID, we take a particular table, we go into the records, we change the post, the method to post to create a record, and then we give to it, well, something. Give me a minute. Let me see what the structure look like. Oh, of course, this is not going to work. It's not, and it's not a valid authorization. I need to copy this, paste it in there, and here I have it. So you see, I have a bunch of things in there. And now what I can do is simply use that information to provide a body. And providing a body to create a record is also simple. By the way, everything that I'm doing here is also documented in our manual. So if any one of you is not able to follow what I'm doing here, please feel free to join to go to the manual and look about it. Otherwise, you can always join the webinar and also get in touch with customer support team. So yeah, okay, I'm trying to create a record with the first name. I'm going to call it Frank. Hey, Frank. So
Hey.
I create that, and you see not authorized to update the field first name. Why? Because I used, oh wow, I used the right key. I think so. Oh yeah, actually I did. In that case, I think I'm actually restricting a bit more on this side. No, everything looks good. Well, there seems to be something fishy going down there that I'm not able to catch. Frank, do you see it? No, I think it's all good. The tables are allowed to be written and created by admins. Anyways, but the idea is that the API keys will only allow you to perform actions that are restricted to that particular role, and nothing more than that. And whatever is wrong in here, I think I'm going to look in and fix that if there is a problem. But yeah, that's how you would restrict certain actions on the API keys also. There are actually more things coming on that part, but you got to wait for the next release for that. And maybe on a closing note, I would actually want to go through something in the server administration. And the private cloud users, they do have access to server administration, right? So it's the idea is very simple. You go to server administration, you configure teams, you configure users, you manage the configuration of your cloud. There's also an option to maintain the server by restarting it, for example, and also to manage the license, right? And only recently we started exploring this idea and giving more power to you. So you don't have to rely, or you don't have to always depend on us. You can do a lot of things on your private cloud or on your private cloud on premise yourself, which is why we are investing now some time in making available the functions, the behavior that modifies a few things in your private cloud within that interface. So you have server configuration right now, which only shows you the email SMTP configuration. Earlier, the private cloud users used to get in touch with us, right? Now you don't need to. With this update, you can configure your SMTP server on your own. What's the benefit? Of course, a lot. You don't need to wait for us to respond, and you can do it on your own. And it's not limited to just that. There are a lot more things coming in. So a lot more things that are very much enterprising. So I mean, I would like to give you a sneak look, but maybe that's up to Aditya. Yeah, and it's a very handy utility. You can just write in. Let's say that private cloud user has some SMTP credential, and you can just write your host name within that field, the port to which Ninox should connect to use the SMTP credential, if the SMTP credential or if the SMTP configuration is secure or not, and if there are some authorizations, to be used, then the username and the password for the authorization. You save it, you restart it, and the private cloud is now configured with the new SMTP credential. And now you can start using your SMTP host and go ahead with that. So that was the highlight of release 3.4.0. And if you guys have any question, I mean, there are, I think, a couple of questions which Fabian and Aditya have been trying to answer. But if you have questions now, I think is the right time to raise hands, maybe come to the panel, and yeah.
Manchu, could we have a look at the restarting of the server and also the long-running processes?
Oh, that's very important, right? Yeah. So server maintenance, of course. Oftentimes, many of the people they had some scripts which were running behind the scenes, and they were taking a lot of time, which would also mean that you're not able to work with Linux. In those situations, you used to get in touch with customer support again, and uh, the query was like, "Hey, restart my cloud." Well, you can do that yourself now. So it's very easy. Just press that button, and the cloud is restarted immediately. So you would have the cloud restarted, and whatever it was running behind the scene would get instantly killed, so that you can optimize the script, for example, or think about whatever the problem is. Well, talking about what's running behind the scene, and it's also important for you to know what's running behind the scene, right? So, well, we have a small feature called running processes. And this is a very simple interface. It's what it does is it gives you information about anything that is running behind your cloud, which doesn't necessarily involve your interaction. So, for example, when you import a database archive, right? It could be a long process. There have been many complaints that hey, my archive is not imported, or I don't know if my archive is imported or not, and so on. Well, the thing is, Ninox, as soon as accepts, I mean, what I'm talking about is just an example. There are a lot more than that. But talking about importing the archive, Ninox does a lot while importing the archive, like, managing your history, making sure everything is associated correctly. And this process takes time. So while it is taking time, you're just sitting idle, wondering what's happening. You can get that information right from there. And let me try to show this to you, how you can use it. So I think I do have a couple of databases that will allow you to. Oh, that's actually a big one. I'm so sorry. It's gonna take some time. Oh, that's gonna take a lot of time to even to upload. Give me a minute. I'll take something relatively small. How about I try to do this one? Download backup, import archive, go to invoices. There's invoices. Oh, in the downloads. Select it, import database, go to this, running processes. Oh, I mean, this was super fast, of course. But yeah, I mean, this was actually fast, but it's this interface would generally come in handy whenever you're wondering there's something fishy going on, and it's taking a lot of time. And usually things in Linux are really fast. You won't even recognize that, and which is why we were not able to capture that over here. But in general, you would always have something coming up over there whenever you find anything fishy going on in your Linux database. And by fishy, I mean, hey, my database is slow, what's happening? That's where you will find it. So yeah, and guys, am I missing anything? I mean, there were a lot of things that I'm sure that I missed a couple of them, but maybe our audience can help us with some questions, if I'm not wrong. Oh, what is the exec endpoint? Dan is asking the question over here. And Frank, would you like to take that up?
Yeah, so the exec endpoint is like the query endpoint. I think Dan asked for it. And the only difference is that it allows to actually update data, while the query endpoint is restricted to only read data. Otherwise, it's the same thing.
So you probably always have had this this problem that you're trying to create a record using the query endpoint, and you would end up with a failure. The reason was the query endpoint doesn't allow you to perform any updating operation, and updating involves creating data, modifying an existing record, or deleting an existing record. But with the exec endpoint, you can do that just fine. So
exactly. So Dan is already counting this as a game changer. And I think we have a couple of other things that also can change games in some situations, like Jack is asking for a send command and query connection. Those are really functions that you will need in order to connect to, for example, Postgre or Microsoft SQL Server databases. So for really more technical integration cases, and we are really happy to tell you more about that, but it's maybe a little bit out of the scope of today's webinar. So Himanshu, what do you think? Maybe in one of the next API webinars, we could cover those topics.
Oh, I would love to. So
yeah.
for the people who are wondering, yeah. So,
okay.
So if anyone is wondering about what the new functions is, how to use them, please join our API webinar. And in the coming days, in the coming webinars, I would definitely touch upon these new added features and how to use them. And of course, the send command and the query connection functions. So
awesome.
by the way, these are, just to mention, these are enterprise features, and they require you to have certain pre-configurations available. So they're not yet available on the public cloud. They're only available on private cloud and on the enterprise plan. So if you have a dire need, get in touch with the sales team and we will make that happen to you, for you.
Okay, thanks so much, Himanshu. Thanks for the demonstration of all the new stuff. And phew, guys, that was really deep, and I'm really proud of you. You have been strong, and we just lost only 10% of the audience during that hour. So though this was like a super deep dive into very technical things, but as you can see, we are having the chance to bring Ninox to more and more really heavy use cases. So some of our customers are really relying with their core processes on the platform, and that sometimes needs those functions that you don't encounter in the first 10 minutes with Ninox, but later on. And I know some people here in the audience are really gonna love it. And we are striving to get more of that stuff to you, into your hands. So let us now utilize our feedback channels, like the support at Ninox.com inbox, write some nice reviews on G2 Crowd and or on the app stores. That will help us a lot. And if you have any question left, we have time for one last question. So whoever, and I don't think we have the time. Maybe I get one person on the panel who wants to raise his hand. Nobody raising hands right now. So one last question on the chat, maybe. It can get intense sometimes. Yeah. Okay, so there is, Himanshu, I think you covered everything, so no questions left. It was really nice to see all of you. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and hopefully see you soon. Join our webinars, and join the Hero webinar, join the next API call. We are there to help you and get things done.
Take care, guys.
Take care, guys. Thank you so much for joining.
Bye, guys.
Oh, Jan, now raise your hand. All right, time to shut it down.